So we're finally doing the old school video, and you guys are about to hear the most influential riders of the 1980s. It's going to be my little brother Maddie and also Fish on a Bike, who actually lived through the 80s. So let's get straight into it.
Jay Mirren absolutely destroyed me in a flatland contest once.
Really?
Like,
so you
it,
went against him? Like
it was a local contest in Seattle.
Wow, that's pretty cool.
And he lived in Vancouver for a little while with my friend Alan. They were roommates and would ride together all the time. Alan was a vert rider, and they would be riding. They would ride a lot. So Jay Mirren just came down to this contest and actually he pulled a 900 in the half pipe contest.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
And then he rode flat too?
And he rode flat and street. He did a 720. We had this box jump for the street contest. Street, I mean, it was what it was, but it was kind of a jumping contest. The main obstacle was a box jump, but this box jump was like 4 feet wide. It was just 4 feet wide, deck, 4 foot wide landing. I mean, it was all just straightforward. Yeah. And he did a 720 over it, and it was just like,
nightmare.
There's
what year was
no
this? The bike's like longer than the box.
What year was it, do you think?
This was 90, I think.
So who was the first 900?
I think it was I think this was 90. Hoffman
was in
at least
89,
Hoffman.
Year, though, right?
Hoffman 89, I think, at least first.
But you know what? Some
in a
people are saying
contest.
it's Mike. They said Mike Dominguez.
Mike
did it
Dominguez.
First. That's what
a lot
somebody
of people
commented and said that. But
yeah.
But I feel like.
But there's no footage of it.
Okay, so is
that
the
It's
why?
word, and I do believe that there are some people that have said, "Oh, I saw it. I was there," but it's never really been like cemented in. You know, I think a lot of people will put like Matt Hoffman first 900 asterisk. Like first 900 at a contest, witnessed by everybody. And then of course there's, I mean, and it's totally believable that Mike did it first when you see the one that he almost pulls at the end of.
It's Mike Dominguez though. It's not like, you know, you're not going to be like, yeah, I don't know about that guy.
You're like Tony from the neighborhood pulled a 900 10 years ago, where you're like, yeah, Tony didn't do
Dude,
that.
my buddy Rick totally was pulling 900s in 1985.
So that's why.
And he had a 16-pound bike.
Yeah.
That's why I'm like, come on now, forget about it. We do have a bit of a structure here. We were supposed to do an 80s video of talking about the most important riders in BMX, because the truth is, I started riding in 1995. Maddie started.
I wasn't there.
Yeah, Maddie was born in 97, okay? So by the time he started riding, you know, it was well into the 2000s. Fish, you started riding when?
1986.
Wow, that was the same year that Rad came out. That's so cool.
Yes, and that was pretty pivotal. I was already very interested in riding by that point, but Rad came out, and it was like, oh no, it's on.
So did it
like,
have,
I need
like
to do
when Rad
this.
came out, did it have like a pop culture kind of feel to it, where like it was out in the open, or was it still feeling underground? Because it's not like the movie like sold a ton of things.
Like, was it a big movie that featured BMX, or was it just like a
No, I mean, you know, I mean, as it is now, I mean, as far as a box office success, I don't think it really was.
It wasn't.
It
at all,
became a
that's what I said.
cult classic.
Yeah.
Years later, people started kind of latching onto it, and especially the BMX community, like just for, I don't know, and I can't speak to how a lot of other like established riders felt about it at the time, but when it came out for me, like, people clown on others that go to the movies by themselves. I didn't care whatsoever. I'm going to see this movie. I'm going by myself. It doesn't faze me whatsoever.
It's so cool.
And
that was he went and saw it.
I know, in theaters.
In the movie theater, yeah. No, and that was the first time I actually was able to experience like seeing freestyle happening in motion and not just in still images.
Oh yeah, because like
in
there
a
were
magazine.
like videos and stuff.
That was like the first like kind of video stuff you've seen.
Like if you like seeing like pro riders and stuff doing their thing.
Yeah,
really?
that was
That's crazy.
And what blew my mind, because I would always see like these still images or even a sequence, but it was like a sequence, and so it's almost like imagine somebody doing the robot.
No
you
way.
know, where doing the robot looks a lot different than like. You know, how
very
like,
good explanation.
So all of a sudden, it's like, oh my gosh, that is so smooth. Like seeing these tricks and seeing an infinity roll and a mega spin or whatever, it's like, oh my gosh, that looks so awesome.
Wow.
And I look so janky.
But what's interesting to me is like that the amount of people that, because you know BMX started in an area. It's not like it started like in multiple areas all at once. Like people had to have seen it in the magazine and been inspired to do it. So what's crazy to me is that it got that many people riding just from seeing a photo of it and then, continuing on and learning stuff. That's really interesting to me.
Right. And I think there might have been some spread through just BMX racing, because of course that's a huge influence. It crossed over from BMX racing to, hey, we could do, some tricks with this. And then of course there was the BMX Action trick team, which would show up at, I don't know how many nationals they rode at, but I know that there were times when
who was the BMX Action trick team?
So BMX Action trick team, to my knowledge, started with R.L. Osborn and Mike Buff. And that was, for a lot of riders, that they laid the blueprint. That was the inspiration. This is what a freestyle show should look like. This is what's possible. This is, wowing the crowd, and wow, I want to do that too. And so that got the ball rolling, I think, and inspired a lot of people.
Well, I really like the start of this because, we were talking about the most influential riders of the 80s, and the two names that you just said right away, like...
Yeah, so many people wanted to be them. They would have the uniform like them and set up their bikes to look the same or try. I mean, they would just emulate them as much as possible.
Yeah, so they played a crucial role in the start of freestyle.
Yes.
Insane. So I'm glad that we got to talk about that.
For sure.
Now, would you say that those riders influenced other pro riders, like that became, very big in the sport, like pretty shortly after that?
I think so. I would say so. Definitely. Yeah. But then they just kind of went on, and that's the great thing. And one of the things I love most about freestyle is it's so, it's freestyle. Like everyone had their own riding style, and it's still very much like that. So often when, if you're watching a pro comp, you're watching the riders, and they are out there, and I can't do it so much nowadays, but still if I see Logan Martin on the course, it's just like, they don't have to show his name. It's like, there's Logan Martin. He's got his style. But back in the day, you could see Brian Blyther boost a half pipe or a quarter pipe, and you knew that's Brian Blyther without question. He's just had his own style. Mike Dominguez had his own style. Eddie Fiola definitely had his oone style. It always went back and forth kind of when they would have the King of the Skate Park series.
I actually
back in the day.
I think, I'm pretty sure that Shad from Snakebite BMX put a video of Fiola, Dominguez, and Blyther having a high air contest. And he said it was like the first high air contest. I'm pretty confident it was them three from what I remember. So it's wild that you mentioned those three. So like I would see like those competitions like where the high air was. They had that really crazy concrete skate park. I feel like it's like where they filmed like some of those credits in Rad.
The two big skate parks back in the day were Pipeline and Upland.
Okay.
And probably for a high air contest, I would say that was probably at Pipeline.
The one that had the full pipe.
Big full pipe.
Yeah, it had the full pipe.
Yeah.
It almost looked like it had a never-ending half pipe in it too, like almost no flat bottom.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? That's what I thought.
It was like a
literally a
circular
pipe,
bowl that was it was literally like a circle cut.
It just
almost.
never finished, right?
Yeah,
that's what
it looked like.
Yeah, but
they were blasting.
I've heard the riders talk about it, and there was it wasn't completely smooth. And there was definitely an area where you wanted to hit and where you wanted to land.
Oh, so that was,
really?
And you could, and it's like, he goes, if you watch the footage from that park, you can see, like, it's noticeable. Like, this is the line.
Well, I guess if you think about
this is where the riders
go. That was the first, like, skate park.
They were just making it up.
Like, they literally
had nothing to base it off of.
And you can pretty much see, too, if you watch, like, the old contest footage from the Pipeline, and you see where they're dropping in and where they're airing out, they're all pretty much
at the same spot.
Yeah, at least for their highest airs.
Yeah.
Sometimes they'll go, some people will go to opposite sides. Usually they'll kind of fly out, do maybe a 270 fly out or something off to a side, and then drop into the full pipe or whatever.
Like, there's still skate parks nowadays where they're making, and you're like, man, this thing feels like
yeah.
You know what I mean? So it would only make sense that they wouldn't be perfect. So Eddie Fiola. I met Eddie in 2005 when I was actually filming a movie called Stick It. I was doing BMX tricks in it, and Eddie Fiola was the stunt coordinator, director for it.
That makes sense.
So me as a kid, like I've heard of Eddie Fiola, but I didn't experience him like you did. Can you tell us what Eddie Fiola was like in the 80s?
Larger than life.
Was he?
I mean, he was, yeah. Well, it was crazy because I would see him riding, and he had a bike that had, like the wheels on it were like junior size, like junior racer size. Like he had like 1 3/8" tires or something on it. And it was like, what is that all about? But I mean, Eddie is kind of short stature, so he's not a real big, burly, tough, tall person. But he's physically, yeah, right, physically. But I mean, he is tough as nails when it comes to just. I mean, he's a stuntman now for a living, so he's tough as nails when it comes to riding. And you know, some people say, I met this bike shop owner, and he asked me once, he's like, have you met Eddie Fiola? And I was like, no, I haven't. He's like, I have. He's cocky. But I kind of figure he can back it up.
Yeah.
Like, and when I've met him now several times, and he knows who he is.
It's like a confidence.
He's got confidence. He knows who he is. He knows what he's capable of. And I don't see him as being cocky at all. I just see him as like he's confident.
He was
knows
kind
who he
of
is.
living of what he was. Like he was that big of a deal, right? Like,
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that's awesome.
But I've never, I mean, when I've hung out with him, it's never felt like he's got that attitude of, you know,
he just feels
I'm
really
a big
cool. Like he's
deal.
just like a really cool guy.
Right,
like,
right.
Just very
Yeah.
just a cool, confident
I'm sure
person.
there's a lot of pride that comes into it too. Like when
I think
been
so
through
too.
a lot of it,
And
you got to hold yourself.
It's
up.
earned pride for
Yeah,
sure,
that's what I'm saying,
and it's also expected pride too. That other people, because everybody when you see Eddie Fiola, you're like, that's Eddie Fiola. You know what I mean? Like, it's not like
Right.
It's how you
It's
would
like,
imagine Eddie Fiola to be.
You know, and there's so many riders that I feel that way about, you know, and that we'll be talking about today.
Yeah.
But he's definitely, I mean, when I first started riding and getting into it and reading magazines and just absorbing everything I could that had to do with BMX, freestyle, and originally I wanted to race, and I wanted to be a BMX racer, and my mom said, you know, no. I'm really not interested in going to the track every weekend, hanging out all day, paying an entry fee for you to race
At
every
least she's
weekend.
honest. Yeah, that's a long one.
And so I was like, all right, well, I'll do tricks instead. I'll do the freestyle aspect of it. She was like, whoa, I don't like that idea either. You're going to get hurt.
Nervous about that.
But I mean, that's one of the other cool things about freestyle. You can do it anywhere. At least back then. Nowadays, when I try to ride flat, because of this, I mean, back then you had tricks were more stationary. You'd hop up and down on the front wheel. You'd hop up and down on the back wheel. You do a tail whip. Like a movement trick was an infinity roll or a G-turn. But now with the rolling tricks that we're doing, if you're not on pretty smooth or really smooth flat ground, it's really
it's hard to do.
It's tough. So where I used to go down to the local 7-Eleven and ride in their parking lot that was kind of sloped and had potholes, and you know, I would go ride. I would say, to my mom's credit, while she didn't want me racing and she was worried about me freestyling, she would actually, if I'm kind of a night owl, if it was midnight and I said, I want to go ride, I'm going to go practice, she knew I wasn't out causing trouble or, you know, stealing cigarettes or, you know,
not doing anything,
going getting drunk or anything. I just wanted to ride my bike. That's what I did.
That's really cool.
She would be like, okay, don't stay out too late, you know? And I'd go ride for a couple hours. I'd come home at 2 in the morning and you're like, okay, I'm home. And I was like 15.
Yeah, and
16.
as you're saying this, what I was thinking in my head was like, of how big BMX was in the 80s and the big boom that happened with kids starting to ride. Like, it makes sense why BMX was so big and so many people wanted to do it, because like it looked like obtainable. Like it was like I could do that. So, and then stuff was new too and exciting.
Yeah.
So like of the hopping around, like on that had to have been the coolest thing as a kid. The tricks got harder, and then you would see all these crazy, you know, I know we're gonna get into Kevin Jones, but like if you saw Kevin Jones ride, you're like, that's impossible.
Yeah, it became
you know
like
what I mean?
less relatable, I guess, pretty much.
In a way.
Yeah.
So that's kind of
No,
interesting.
like-
I never kind of thought of that.
Like back wheel hops, I learned that in 20 minutes, 30 minutes. I went down to the store down the street from my house, went in the parking lot, and I bought a cheap pair of pegs and just started practicing hopping up and down.
And it's
then,
probably so rewarding when you got that too.
oh yeah. No, that was a big part of why I stuck with it, is that rush of like, I did that. I did that.
Yeah.
You know, and I can still get that feeling when I do something. It's like, and sometimes it's maybe something I've done before but haven't done for a
In a
while.
while.
You know,
Yeah, I
haven't been
remember
able to
last
do
time
for-
when he was here and he did a trick. I can't remember which one it was, and he was like
Hyped
yes.
up.
Yeah, I was like, I thought that was so
That's
cool.
good. That's
I was
awesome.
like, he loves BMX, which is great. So we talked about a name earlier, Mike Dominguez.
Yes.
Describe Mike Dominguez's riding in the 80s.
Huge.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, seeing his pictures in the magazines, and it was, and again, a lot of what I know since I lived in the Seattle area, I got through magazines. That was the outlet that I received this information. So I wasn't there living it. So, you know, take that with a grain of salt, because I'm getting an editorialized version of events that are happening. But you would see the pictures, and the pictures don't lie. You would see, you know, especially I remember there being pictures of, I think there might have just been 2, but they were showing different people doing fakie airs at a contest, at an AFA contest, and just Dominguez was so much higher than
You probably
like, everyone.
seeing that and knowing he's going in fakie, like as a kid, you're like, oh.
Yeah.
Right, you're like, he died. Like, there's no way he like landed
Dang, that's
and
his
rolled
last
out
photo,
of that
huh?
and,
You're like,
and lived.
It's not even like Photoshop's not even a thing.
No,
Nothing exists. So you're like, wow, he didn't make it.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, well, that's wild.
Right, but now, I mean, kind of what's really cool is with YouTube and stuff, and like Snakebite, shout out Shad, good work.
Absolutely.
There's I can go on YouTube now and find so many contest runs from, I remember reading about this contest.
I
And-
noticed that lately
and
when I
it's
was
so
Googling,
cool.
like, or YouTubing old school riding. There is so much footage that is just constantly popping up from these guys that have this
You just
footage,
had
and
the
they're like,
tapes, right?
I'm putting it up. And dude, we are so lucky to have
Yeah.
that, because the history, like it's being shared now again. It's almost like there was a lull in that history because the technology wasn't there, but it like caught up to be able to redistribute that and be able to tell those stories. So I am so grateful for everybody that puts in the effort doing that.
And getting to see, like I mentioned, like editorialized. There was a writer, I won't mention names, but there was a writer that was a pro that I had met this guy that actually rode a scooter, like a GT Zoot scoot, like, you know, a little 12-inch wheel scooter, not like a Razor style.
Yeah,
scooter.
not Razor, the actual one that had like small BMX.
Small BMX, like mag wheels and tires and little tubes, BMX handlebars, and I was talking about, man, I've never been to a contest. I don't know, I'm not good enough to enter and stuff. And he's like, you know what? You're better than this pro. And I'm like, but they're a pro. Like, there's no way I'm better. Like, sometimes it's who you know. And so, you know, no shade on that ride. Like I said, I don't want to name names or anything, but I think a big part of it is just kind of knowing people and getting sponsorship and stuff. Just, you know.
He could even be where you live to, you know,
right.
at the same time too.
Right. Some people are good at selling themselves and hyping themselves up. And I mean, I guess for a sponsor, if you can do that and get attention and promote the product in a positive way,
yeah,
you know, you don't necessarily have to be the best.
Oh, that's interesting.
But I was shocked. And then at one point I saw some video footage of this pro's run at a contest, and my jaw dropped. I was like, I think I am better than him. How can this be? But it was like a lesson learned. But seeing a lot, to get back, my point in saying that is seeing a lot of these old footage, all this old footage that's coming out, and getting to see this, seeing Mike Dominguez ride in video. And it's like, okay,
You're like, the hype was the real deal.
The hype was real.
Wow.
he was really that good.
So speaking of another ramp rider I want to bring up, and because we spoke about him off camera, Dennis McCoy.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
What kind of influence did he have on you throughout your early years
what's
there?
Interesting is the first BMX show, like pro BMX team that I got to see was a Haro show. And funny thing, I don't remember the 3 riders that were there, but I remember Dennis McCoy was there, but I hadn't heard of him before. And so, and this was 86. This was right after I got my very first like real freestyle bike. I got a GT Pro Performer, and I was like, who's Dennis McCoy? And it was like, oh, and he just went off. And I was like, okay, I see why he's riding for Haro.
Wow.
And then, you know, I used to think of it like just, wow, he's good at ramps, he's good at flatland. And then I really kind of thought about that was kind of unusual that he was really good
So he was
at ramp and really good at flatland.
He was special, right, at both?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. I mean, another name we should mention, Rick Moliterno. Very underrated, but also absolutely killing it in the jam circles at, you know, for flatland, and then just go blast 10 feet on the quarter pipe. And
I'm
just
glad you brought that name up.
just so good, and I don't think he gets the recognition
I've been saying that
for
and,
that,
and I didn't
that he
even
should.
experience him in the 80s. You know, I experienced him in the end of the 90s and like early 2000s, and I was like, this guy is so good. Like in standard country, all the fakie back up to pegs and then stuff like that was just so, nobody was doing it that I saw besides him. So like even still, like all of his slider stuff, like when he would land on the transition into sliders, like dude, nobody ever was at that level of doing that trick, and you still see his slider tricks and you're like, what the heck? Like it was so special. So
yeah.
so that's interesting to hear that even further back that he was still underrated. is
Right,
wild.
right. Yeah, in the mid 80s, mid to late 80s. And then back to DMC. Again, when we talk about unmistakable style, whether he was ramp or flatland, to me it was like you knew
Okay.
without a question who was riding. Especially he would do flatland stuff, and then he'd start doing his footwork things and kicking his feet around on the front tire. And it's like, how does he do that? Like I've tried to do like the footwork stuff, which I won't go too into it. But it
was like a big part.
It was part of it. Not a lot of people did it, but there was a few people that were definitely could do footwork. But
You know,
you watch Dennis McCoy do it though, and you'd be like, why am I even going to bother?
Okay.
Because nobody could do footwork like Dennis McCoy did.
Let's just say the name, Dave Nourie. What comes to mind when you think of that name?
Well, I mean, so many things. But I mean, one of the first things is just you can't separate him from the Gumby and the Nourie handstand. Like those balance moves are just iconic. And I mean, I've done so many shows and can get onto my bike and ride upside down and backwards, you know, on front wheel, back wheel, whatever. Do all these crazy hard tricks. And I'll do a Nourie handstand and the crowd will just lose their minds. And to me, it's not that difficult, but it's also something you don't see every day. And even then, not a lot of riders do it. And the riders that do it, not all of them can get that really good extension.
That was a bit of a wow factor when you saw him doing that trick for the first time.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, it was like, what? You know, and it was just really impressive. And then one of the like the first contest footage I ever saw was a competition from Portland, Oregon, AFA Masters in 1987. And I remember watching the footage, and it's like, how did Dave Nourie not win this contest?
Wow.
He was on fire.
And he was pretty young at the time, right?
Yeah.
Like he was.
Yeah. And so, I mean, he fell off the bike a couple times, and I guess that's probably why. But he did so many awesome tricks.
Yeah, but the tricks he did were like, really
you know,
great.
and so again, so innovative and original in his own style.
Okay, so let me just throw a name out there because I've heard you talk about him before, but I would love to just see how excited you get, and I'd love everybody else to hear about it. Martin Aparijo.
Martin is my homeboy.
You're proud to say that.
Yeah.
Because at one time he was your favorite.
He was
rider,
my
right?
favorite rider.
And
Like
now he's a friend of yours.
Like bar none. Yeah, when I was starting to ride, just his style, he always had a smile on his face. He was snappy. I mean, with his riding style in a different way than say DMC. DMC was snappy also. But Martin definitely had his own style and his own brand of tricks and originals like lawnmower and cherry picker, and ninja stands. And he would come out and just blow me away just with I mean, he'd do pedal pickers on a freewheel, which just still blows my mind.
So did he invent the cherry picker?
Yes.
Are you kidding me?
No.
How do you come up with that?
Yeah, it's such a, imagine like being like,
I was trying to
I
stand
put
on
my
the
foot
bike
here,
the
I put
other
my
day.
leg
Yeah,
over the
I
top.
was like,
should
that's
work.
insane.
Yeah, no, and I'm sure the really cool thing about hanging out with Martin is you could ask him that, and he has a story for you.
Really?
Yeah, no, he's a great storyteller, and he remembers everything.
That's so cool.
Yeah, he's a wizard.
Cool. That's very cool. So I got another one for you. And I feel like this is somebody who, like, I know was super important, but I still don't fully understand. Ron Wilkerson.
Yeah.
Where do we start with him?
Well, one, I just want to say, at one point, not that I knew him at all, but after I got into freestyle, I found out that Ron used to live in the same city that I grew up in, Federal Way. And so I was like, oh, that's really cool. Like, I wish I would have known that. I'm not even sure, though, if he was riding.
That's why I was like,
lived there.
there's no way that
You know?
he would have been riding there. And
If you guys are riding at the
You know?
same time, you would have.
I don't know, though, because I mean, I
like,
started
how would
riding,
you be connected? You know, think about it.
and I
There's
didn't
nothing
meet
to
any other
connect you.
riders
Yeah,
for
but I feel like it's got to be
several
a way,
months
right?
before I saw somebody else that rode.
And that's, yeah, because like,
Word's got to spread when you see a random dude doing spinning in a parking lot. I feel like, you know.
yeah, but
Actually, I kind of lied. I got to back up a little bit. The first time I saw freestyle being done in real life was Mountain Dew commercial in 1984.
okay.
That was it aired for just like a couple weeks, and then I think parents called and complained,
way.
you're gonna get our kids hurt by inspiring them to do these crazy bicycle stunts.
No way.
And so they pulled the commercial.
So it was like a commercial that had a decent amount of riding.
It had Wilkerson in it, and I think Fiola, and one of the people that did some of the stunt, some of the stunts, Pat Romano, who rode a fixed geared BMX bike. Yeah, like in the movie Rad, when you see it's almost like an infinity roll, sitting on the seat, pedaling backwards with the bar spinning.
Yeah.
That's Pat Romano.
That's real?
Yeah,
Wow.
that's legit.
I thought there was a string on that thing.
Dude,
all
honestly-
these years, I thought that was like
no,
a
he totally
setup.
will do
Oh
that.
my
Just
And-
hands off, just like.
Yeah.
And then at the very end of the bicycle boogie sequence, when Christian gets up on the back wheel and spins really fast
Yeah.
in a circle, that's Pat
So
Romano
that's
doing
real.
that. That's real. Yeah.
Oh my
No
goodness.
way.
Yeah, he was
Hey.
basically artistic cycling, but on a BMX
I
bike.
have
I
a
am
whole new
shocked.
appreciation for that scene.
I
right
am
now.
shocked. I really thought
I
that
thought
was
it was
fake.
fake. I thought that was the first
Oh,
like
no.
CGI.
Yeah.
I don't know.
No, I mean, of course, anytime you see the actors' faces, but if you watch that scene, you can see sometimes like when they're straddling the head tube and like pedaling.
Oh, the cadence
you
is
can
like
you can
off.
see the cadence is off, but then you see like from the neck down, and if you look at the sprockets, you can see a real tiny sprocket on the front, and Pat's actually pedaling it and riding it, like basically doing a pedaling death truck back
Interesting.
when that was made.
Well,
Interesting.
all of Crew's parts are real though, right?
Yeah.
Oh, of course.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, Cruz, without a doubt,
'Cause that would
the
break-
best rider that
Yeah.
ever.
That would break Chip's heart if he
Yeah,
found
like-
that out that it was.
I wouldn't want to
Potentially
be the one to
somebody
tell
else
him
doing
that.
it.
I'm just
right,
saying.
right,
You know?
right. No, Wilkerson was also a rider that competed pro level flatland, pro level ramps for quite some time in the 80s. Anyway, but he's also, I think, really important to the sport in that he was one of the first, if not the first, rider to say, you know what, I'm going to do my own bike. I'm going to make my own freestyle bike, by freestylers for freestylers, and came out with Wilkerson Airlines, and then said,
That's sweet. Name.
I never knew this. I'm like, what?
the contest scene, I don't know. I think we can do better. We're going to have a King of Vert contest, and he was the first, as far as I know, rider ran national series
Well,
of
even if
competitions.
he wasn't the first, he had the one that made the most impact early on.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. No, again, I mean, kind of like Buff and RL were the blueprint for doing a freestyle show. Wilkerson kind of set the stage for doing a competition, like just as a rider, and not really with the motivation. Well, and I can't really speak to the motivations of the, where the first freestyle contest came from and what their motivation was for setting them up and having them, other than maybe, hey, we should give these kids a challenge and give them a chance to show off and see who's the best. But with Wilkerson, it was definitely, I feel like this needs to be done for the riders and give them a chance to get together, hang out, ride, compete, push each other. And so that, it was, again, I'm fairly certain. It's been a long time since it happened, but 1989, I'm pretty sure it was a King of Vert contest when Hoffman landed the first 900 on half pipe in a competition.
In a competition, yeah. So would you say, and this is just me, was Wilkerson like the first like punk rock kind of like dude in a way?
One of them, yeah. I mean, he was one of the first that was kind of like uniforms. The racers can have that. I'm wearing board shorts and a tank top, or t-shirt, or I can think of pictures in my mind where he's wearing like board shorts or some kind of shorts, maybe a tank top or a t-shirt, and an unbuttoned like Life's a Beach shirt or whatever, some kind of button-up short sleeve collared shirt, but just flapping open as he's riding, and going with more of a skater style.
Yeah, so he had like kind of a thing on the direction. He was the one that kind of got rid of the.
I feel he was definitely a big part of that image and going away, which, and I might get flamed for this, but I don't know that I necessarily miss it, but I think when you show up to do a show and like even the leathers and jersey,
it felt official and it was cool, right?
It was pro. It looked super pro. Like if you show up at a school like that, I mean, the kids automatically know, wow, these guys are pro.
Yeah.
Where nowadays a lot of, people just maybe matching t-shirts.
Before we move on from Wilkerson,
Yeah.
he invented tricks.
Yeah.
And stuff like, what's some of the stuff that comes to your mind about Wilkerson, like trick-wise?
Yeah, I'm not even, well, I mean, the big one, the nothing. And I don't know how many people know that was a Wilkerson creation. And there's others, but that one stands out far and above.
That's
like
a cool
that's
trick. Like it's class. It's always going to be a classic trick.
I mean, it was about the only thing I think that kind of tops that, at least from back in the 80s, when it was just like, are you freaking kidding me? What did he do? I think the only thing that tops the nothing and seeing that magazines is the cover with Matt Hoffman doing the first flip fakie.
That was a big deal.
And I used to argue with an old friend of mine that's like, oh, you can't do a backflip to fakie on a ramp, because you would come up to the transition, and when you flipped backward, you would just fly out over the flat bottom and you would die. Like, you can't do it. It's not possible. And so I come home and had magazine showing up at my house, and I look at the cover and I'm like, oh my. And like within half an hour, my phone rings and I pick up the phone and the first words I hear are, all I want to know is who told me that a backflip fakie on a quarter pipe was impossible.
That's pretty funny.
I was like, I was wrong. What can I say? I was wrong. This is freaking rad, and I was wrong.
All right, we've talked about Matt Hoffman multiple times in these videos already,
constantly.
but we just have to, real quick, we have to. When you first saw Matt Hoffman, what kind of effect did it have on the sport?
I mean, again, this was, coming through the magazines, but obviously with all we know now, the hype was real. I can remember, I think it was either on the cover of the magazine or at the beginning of an article about Matt, but it was like the boy who will be king, because it was just, they were like, pros are dreading the day this kid turns pro. Like when he turns pro, he's going to dominate, and he did. His first pro contest, he won the expert class, and he entered expert and pro. So first he rode expert, totally dominated, beat everybody, then entered pro, totally dominated, beat everybody, and got first in the high air competition at that contest.
That is
but
such a cool move.
He was the first person coming out, and it's like, okay, I'm going to do one-footed no-hander to no-footed can, or whatever.
He would do combinations and stuff, right?
Where everyone else was pretty much just, all right, I'm doing a tabletop. Now I'm doing a one-footer.
To the next level.
Now I'm doing a can. And he's like, I'm going to do all those at the same time, or one after the other, as I'm falling into the ramp.
That's awesome to hear. So I feel like we covered a whole lot in this one. It's a helicopter, guys. It's a very rare thing, but we'll get through this one. Helicopter's officially gone.
Helicopter's officially gone. I mean,
Flatland's your thing, okay?
yeah.
And when it comes to Flatland, who was the most influential rider?
I mean, for me, there was a lot of influences. I mean, I took influences from here and here from, like I said, Martin was a big influence early on, Wilkerson, DMC, Woody Edson and R.L. Osborn, also influences. I mean, they were the big pro names, but then Kevin Jones came along, the Dork in New York videos came along, and...
so, like, when you first saw Kevin Jones, like, in Dork in New York...
Yeah.
What was your initial thought?
How?
Did it really feel like impossible, the stuff that he was doing?
No, it was just, I can't even imagine. And then it was, what was kind of funny is it got to the point where we would ride, like my friends and I, or we'd be at a contest, and the contest would end and we'd all be hanging out afterward and, riding a little bit or just talking and stuff. And he had become kind of mythical. So we'd all like, you know what, I heard Kevin Jones is doing. And we come up with stuff that seemed absolutely crazy. And now people are doing this stuff. It's just like, I mean, kind of the same way. We'd be like, man, I hear, somebody's working on doing backflip to tail tap, in a bowl or on a quarter pipe. And I said, yeah, right. Like that'll ever happen. And then you guys know, like that's.
Yeah, of course.
Like, oh, how about backflip to manual to whatever.
That's been BMX, just been on constant repeat of that cycle of impossible becoming possible.
Right.
And it's still like I don't even like to think that things are impossible because the ramp's just going to get bigger.
Yeah, you make a bigger ramp.
You know what I mean? Like it's nuts.
No, things have gotten to a point where it's like, seriously, things that we used to joke about, me and my friends, that would never happen. People are doing them. So
when we talk about these tricks that are like just completely mind-blowing, is there a certain trick that comes to mind that you saw Kevin Jones do and you were like, that is ridiculous?
I mean, the death truck was just how do you do that?
Yeah.
What is that about? I mean, hitchhikers they had a reputation before anybody even knew what it was, because Mark Eaton, aka Lung Mustard, had said, like, Kevin Jones has this new trick called the hitchhiker, and all I'm gonna say is it would take me 6 months to even begin how to learn it.
So let me ask you this question. Here you are, all these years later, did you ever think that you would still be riding like this? Have you ever think about that, like in the future, of how long you'd be riding or what life would be like? Because like you could still do the trick that we were talking about right now.
Right. And yeah, I in my mind, it was like, until I physically can't, I will be riding my bike in some fashion. Like it's going to happen. I'm going to be riding. And I have old friends that I maybe will reconnect with and they're like, so you still riding that bike? Oh yeah. And they're like, I knew it.
It's your life.
I'm not surprised at all. Or they'll just like, pop up on my Facebook feed or on Instagram or something and be like, I knew you'd still be riding that little bike, or whatever. Because it's just,
that's cool.
It's become, it's a big part of my identity, I guess you could say. I'm fish on a bike. It's
fish on a bike.
It's a thing. So
fish on a bike. I'm so glad that we sat here and did this. Like for everybody out there that has been wanting these 80s videos, I hope that this, was the video that you were looking forward to, because I learned so much in this one. I know you learned an impossible amount of stuff.
My brain hurts right now.
And I'm just grateful that you took the time to do this one. So everybody, please go follow Fish on a Bike. All you old school guys out there, this guy is still doing it. He is still doing those tricks, and he's doing it clean and making it look good. And he's setting such a great example of what life of a BMX rider could be like. I am so happy that we've been doing these videos, these talking videos, and hopefully all of you that are from the old school era, you guys got to re-experience this and get excited about it. And hopefully you younger kids stuck around and actually learned some BMX history, because history is important. It really is. So
gotta know where you came from.
Yeah, either way, awesome video. I had so much fun. I hope you guys enjoyed it as well. And we will see you guys in the next video. Peace.